Well, in this video we're going to introduce the fascinating idea of the circulation of the blood. And just before we start, we're thinking about the heart in the middle here. Now, when you're thinking about anatomy, you're always looking at someone else. So that's the left side and that's the right side, because we're looking at someone else's heart. So here we have the left side of the heart, and here we have the right side of the heart. And the heart's got two chambers, the atria at the top and the ventricles at the bottom. And we're going to start this circulatory story now. Now, I'm going to start here in this bottom chamber on the right hand side. So that is the right ventricle. So here we have blood in the right ventricle. And I'm colouring this in blue, which of course is ridiculous because blood is not blue. But for drawing diagrams of the blood, we normally do red for the oxygenated blood, the blood which is high in oxygen, and blue for the blood which is lower in oxygen. That's why I've drawn it blue. Now, if the blood is low in oxygen, where does it need to go to get oxygenated? Well, of course, it needs to go here, up to the lungs. So first of all, the blood needs to go up to the lungs. So this ventricle will contract, ejecting the blood up into the lungs, and the blood will perfuse, circulate through the lungs. And as that happens, it will be progressively oxygenated. We'll get high levels of oxygen, so we start drawing that as a red colour. So the blood is going to go to the lungs relatively low in oxygen, and it's going to return from the lungs relatively high in oxygen. Now, the vessel there between the right ventricle and the lungs, that vessel there is the pulmonary artery carrying blood to the lungs. Pulmonary means to do with the lungs. And this is the pulmonary veins. There's actually 4 of these in real life, carrying the blood from the lungs back to the heart. But we're noticing now that the blood is fully oxygenated, so we're drawing it as bright red. And that blood's going to go into the left atrium. And from there it's going to go through, there's actually a pair of valves there. It's going to go through to the left ventricle. The left ventricle. Then the left ventricle is going to contract, and that's going to eject all the blood out into the aorta, this major blood vessel. So all the blood from the left side of the heart goes to the aorta. And maybe you can see already that it was the right side of the heart that's pumping blood to the lungs. So we call the right side of the heart the lung pump. The lung pump. And as we're about to see, it's the left side of the heart that's pumping blood to the body. So all of the blood that goes to the body, apart from the lungs, which we don't count as the body, although it is part of the body, obviously, that's the lung circulation, and we're now talking about the body circulation. All the blood to the body circulation, what's sometimes called the somatic circulation, goes via the aorta. Now, this is diagrammatic, it's not anatomically accurate, but it represents what's going on. So we want the blood to go from the aorta, and it will go through various arteries, and it will go through what is called the brachial artery, and this is what takes blood into the arms. So the blood's going to go into the arms, and in the arms the cells there are working away, so they need the oxygen, so they're going to take up the oxygen, and they're going to reduce the amount of oxygen in the blood, and they're going to put in some carbon dioxide. So once the blood is draining from the arms, in this case via the cephalic vein, then that blood is going to be deoxygenated, and it's going to be blue. Then that's going to go back to the heart via a vessel called the superior vena cava. Now, all the top half of the body is drained via the superior vena cava. So that blood's going to go back through the superior vena cava. And can you see it's going back to the heart? It's going back to the, what chamber is that? It's the right side, isn't it? And it's the atrium. So that's the right atrium. So can you see the blood that's going from the right atrium through to the right ventricle is this relatively deoxygenated blood. So that kind of describes the circulation to the arms. But then other branches from the aorta will take blood up to through the neck. The big arteries that you can feel pulsating in your neck are the carotid arteries, and they're going to take blood to the head, including, of course, the all-important brain. And again, the blood's going to perfuse through that. And as it goes through, it's going to give up some of its oxygen, it's going to collect some carbon dioxide, and then it's going to drain. And the big veins you can see in the side of your neck are the jugular veins. The jugular veins. And the jugular veins are going to drain back. And again, because it's the top half of the body, they're going to drain back into the superior vena cava. These great big cavernous veins that take the blood back to the heart. So that's all very good for the top half of the body, but of course we need a blood supply on the bottom half of the body as well. And so blood's going to go down, and we can see that blood's going to go to the liver, this vital organ in the top right hand side of the abdomen, just under the right ribs there. And the vessel taking blood there is the hepatic artery taking blood to the liver. And the blood's going to go through the liver. As the blood goes through the liver, of course, it's going to be deoxygenated. The liver is actually very metabolically active, lots of biochemistry going on in the liver. That's going to drain from the liver via the hepatic veins, and the hepatic veins are going to drain into the big vein draining the bottom half of the body is the inferior vena cava, into the inferior vena cava, which also drains back into the right atrium before going back into the right ventricle to go to the lungs to get oxygenated again. Now, complications arise already. Now, this tube here represents the gut, or what we call the gastrointestinal tract. Basically, that's everything from your esophagus to your anus, from your food pipe all the way through your stomach, your small intestine, large intestine is represented by that tube there. And of course, it's living tissue, it's going to need a blood supply, and some of that is going via the mesenteric artery here, taking blood to the gastrointestinal tract, which is absolutely brilliant. That gets oxygenated there. And of course, as the blood goes through, it's going to give up the oxygen, pick up the carbon dioxide. So it's going to change to what we draw as blue blood, which of course is partly deoxygenated blood. Now, it's a bit of a complication here because can you see there's something called the hepatic portal vein? Now, a portal vein is a vein which connects two things without going back via the main veins. So the portal vein actually starts in capillaries and ends in capillaries. So blood is going to go from the gastrointestinal tract, and it's not going to drain back into the inferior vena cava straight away until it's gone through the liver. It has to go through the liver first. So the blood from the gut does not drain straight back into the inferior vena cava. It drains into the liver first. Why is that? Why do you think? Well, in the gastrointestinal tract, there's all sorts of bacteria. You've probably heard of these, the good bacteria, the microbiome. But they produce waste products of metabolism. And if they went straight back into the blood, they'd make you feel sick all the time. So they go to the liver first, and the liver is this biochemical processing factory. It breaks down the waste products from the bacteria. So the blood here in the hepatic portal vein is going to contain waste products from bacteria. That's going to be cleaned out by the liver, and the clean blood is going to go from the liver in the hepatic veins back into the inferior vena cava. So it's going to clean it all out. If that wasn't the case, you'd be feeling sick right now. And hopefully you're not, because your liver is doing its job. And as well as that, foods that are absorbed from the gastrointestinal tract go to the liver for processing before they go back into the systemic circulation again, the systemic circulation, the circulation for the whole body. All the systems of the body. These are all the systems of the body. Now, blood's going to carry on down through the lower part of the, going down in the aorta to the abdominal aorta, and some blood is going to go to the kidneys. In fact, a lot of blood goes to the kidneys because the kidneys are where the blood is filtered and cleaned and the urine's produced. So as the blood goes through the kidneys, again, it's going to become partly deoxygenated. The blood as it goes through the kidneys is also going to be cleaned, and the waste products from the blood are going to be excreted into the urine. So anything that the kidneys don't want kept in the blood go into the urine. Anything the kidneys want kept in the blood, they keep in the blood, and they will send back via the renal veins back into the inferior vena cava, which is taking blood back all the way up, all the way up there, all the way up there, back into the right atrium, to go to the right ventricle, to go back to the lungs to get oxygenated. And of course you want plenty of blood going to your legs so you can run and move around. So blood is going to go further down, and the main vessel taking blood into the legs are the femoral arteries, so they're taking blood to the legs. As the blood goes through the legs, it's going to give up some of its oxygen, collect carbon dioxide, then the blood is going to drain from the legs via the femoral veins. The femoral veins are going to drain back up into the abdominal cavity, into the inferior vena cava, all the way back up to the right side of the heart, the right atrium, to go to the right ventricle, to go to the lungs to get oxygenated again. So quite amazing really. We've got this whole circulatory system picking up oxygen, getting rid of carbon dioxide in the lungs, taking oxygen to the tissues, taking waste carbon dioxide from the tissues, all circulating around all the time. The brilliant, complicated, but in essence really such a simple circulatory system. So that is the essence of the circulatory system.